Yeah, I know. I made a couple of videos in the middle of the night already about this. Um, but I just thought I'd just chat it out a little bit more. This Charles Vallow tragedy that is just playing on my mind. I know everyone's gone over it quite a lot. There's lots of footage, there's lots of discussion, there are a lot of points of view. There's a lot of things that people have said about every step that was taken that day and before and after. When Alex Cox made his 911 call, he has perhaps cleaned himself up first because, you know, he's been bashed over the head with a baseball bat by Charles Vallow. Whether he looks like he's a little bit wet, is his hair as if it's been rubbed, is his t-shirt splashed with water, is there a wet towel in the bathroom, where were the things that he cleaned up with, were there bloody tissues anywhere in the house? I realised that in the cop shop the police officer asks Alex Cox, as maybe a matter of procedure, would you like us to call a paramedic? He's looked at Alex's head and he hasn't offered him a bandage or an ice pack or anything. But, you know, I think law would require you ask someone if they need to see a professional medical health provider, because that is the duty of care. So, bang, bang, bang. Not one shot, several shots, straight into Charles's chest. And Alex has cleaned himself up. He's gone into his room. He's placed his gun down near the wall in the bedroom by the mattress that he was sleeping on while he was staying on his holiday with Laurie. He wasn't asked, okay, and then did you text or phone Laurie? So we're keeping that in mind as well. So we as the officers, because remember, look, let me just backtrack a little bit. I do talk about the 1% all the time and how people talk about the 1% in our society and in forums and everywhere, and how they think of the 1%, who they think it is. So for some people it's the elite, for some people it's the very rich, or it's the very smart, or it's the psychopathic, or it's the unlucky with dis-ease, or it's the people that are at any end of any spectrum. So there's a lot of 1%, and let's just remember that 1%, you know, means that there's 99% of any organization or a part of a person that's good, or, you know, maybe, or an organization that fulfills its duties and duty of care and applies itself. No one is infallible, not the Pope, although they damn well give that a good shot, didn't they, Pope John Paul II and his infallibility. Yeah. So no one's infallible, no one's perfect, and, you know, yes, police officers are trained to be able to deal with these situations, to manage scenes, to follow procedure and to carry out an investigation, keeping safety in mind, keeping law and order in mind, keeping in mind the fact that things might need to go to trial and they need to be hitting certain sort of points of conduct themselves with procedure, with, just say, for example, reading someone their rights. So we're back in the room with Alex, the room where he stayed the night, where there's a mattress on the floor. So we think, according to him, he's cleaned his head up, so we'd want to go and look for the wet tissue, the wet towel, the bloodied tissue paper, the blood on a towel. Maybe is there splattering on clothes of water or blood? We then want to know, so your sister Laurie, did you call her first as well in these 2 to 5 minutes, you say, in between the shooting and phoning 911? Was this a text? What did you relay? May I see your phone? Was it a phone call? What did you say? During the 911 call, Charles Vallow is spoken about as being a person who has come at Alex. He's come at me and I've shot him. And this, of course, is the narrative, that the expression that's most important to Alex during the time of talking to the police officer on the road and in the 911 call. So he shot his brother Charles Vallow in self-defense. So we're getting relayed to us through this 911 call that Charles Vallow, that has been aggressive. Alex is asked to spell Charles Vallow's name. So bearing in mind that Alex Cox has known Charles Vallow for many years, well over a decade, he would have spelled Charles's name several times, as an understatement. He would have seen it written probably thousands of times. His sister shares the name. His sister took Charles's name when she married him. Alex Cox spells Charles's name VALLO. Is it just the adrenaline coursing through his veins? Is it because Alex Cox is just a bit of a confused person at this time, and the stress is so great that he just can't remember simple things like this? Has he just never been a very good speller? VALLO. I feel, oh gosh, is this too mislead? Because we can't have people being able to do a quick tappity-tap search to see Vallow, their name, come up in any situation on the screen there, explaining any situation, like Charles Vallow may have been reporting that his wife is bonkers, thinks he's someone called Ned Schneider, has threatened his life. That wouldn't do. So VALLO, just for now. Let's just get through this next stage. He's asked by the CPR, by the dispatcher, and you can tell the tone in her voice. She knows something's not right, as you often can with dispatchers. They should be respected more by the police. Asked, can we have a debriefing? What did you think? How did you feel? What's your vibe? What did you get from this call? Because they have good gut instincts, right? They've heard it all. Alex Cox is asked, in kind of a little bit of exasperation, because he's been difficult with this dispatcher as well. So do you think you could do some CPR? Would you be able to do that? Would you be willing to do that, pretty much? Alex answers as if he's saying he would like pepperoni on his pizza. Yes, indeed. He goes, sure. And then, what do we hear? Whoops. Bit of that, bit of mattress action. Yeah, bit of compression going on there in that little bedroom that he crashed the night in, on the double bed mattress that's on the floor. Bouncity bounce. Yes, I'm doing CPR. It's quite exhausting. It's all a big chore. Charles is lying face down, isn't he? I thought. Didn't ask about turning him over or anything like that. He's lying face down as if he was facing away from the bedrooms as well, perhaps facing away from that hallway that leads to those bedrooms. But anywho, that's up to the police officers, so that's what the forensic team's there for. They arrive soon. We get through this call and the first responders arrive, and I don't know how many shootings in suburban neighbourhoods these police officers need to deal with, and this is a pretty special situation. It would be an intense situation. There's going to be a lot happening, and they've got to secure the scene. You've got nosy neighbours, you've got cars wanting to drive through, you've got to control your suspect, if indeed that's what he is. You've got to control the wife when she arrives. So the suspect is asked where his gun is. It's in the room, it's inside the house. He's asked to sit down on the curb and remain there. He complies. He's asked here if he's okay, and he's okay. Got a little bit of tissue paper here that I'm touching. The tissue paper's not wet, there's no blood. Yes, I'm all right. Maybe some adrenaline running through my veins. Well, that's to be expected. And the police officer tries to tie down a timeline and ask Alex basically his relationship with Charles. Where is that at? What is he doing there? And what has happened that morning? And, he finds out that Alex Cox has known Charles Vallow for a very long time, and for most of that time the relationship was pretty hunky, and that in fact when his sister Laurie and Charles had already been separated recently, Charles had been to Alex's home. Nothing was asked about that. Oh, was that because of why? What was discussed? Was it a friendly visit? Was it to discuss, anything in particular? Because we know in our 2020 hindsight that maybe they were discussing some pretty fucked up allegations that Laurie was making about Charles being Ned Schneider and that sort of thing. So, we don't know what was discussed. We learn that Alex has come in from out of town. We don't learn, there's no curiosity right here about, was this a planned trip? When did you decide to come? How long are you going to stay for? Did you know Charles was going to be here? Why was Charles here? Oh, he's from out of town, is he? Doesn't live here. They eventually work out where everyone lives. They can't work out. Tylee was there, she wasn't there. Laurie was there, she wasn't there. JG was there, he wasn't there. The shooting happened and then they went to school. Eventually the cop sort of helps Alex out quite a bit, and they work out that Alex and Charles were alone after Laurie and Tylee and JJ had left to go to school, and that's when the shooting happened. No questions asked really around that. There's lots of weird shit there, some of which I've just mentioned. With regards to the baseball bat, Tylee coming out with a baseball bat and then they still decide to leave for school. I mean, would Tylee want to attack such a stand-up guy, in her own words, stand-up guy as Charles Vallow, father figure, a good man? Poke him with a bat, says Alex. Yeah, well, that's probably what happened. I reckon she's just nudged him with a bat to say, Charles, father o' mine, father figure that has been there for me through thick and thin during your marriage to my mother. Here's a bat to protect yourself because this shit is getting wild and I can see that you're in trouble. Who knows? Maybe Tylee was put on the spot about the bat. Tylee definitely looked very uncomfortable in that discussion with that cop, that patronising cop who was asking her the questions outside after he'd spoken to Laurie. But anywho, that's out of sequence. So we have the police officer in probably quite an intense situation. I mean, it's probably quite a lot of excitement as well. It's a shooting, it's a mystery, there seems to be something to unravel, but kind of seems to think it's pretty straightforward because the key piece of information here that drives them all from here on in seems to be that Charles is from out of town and there was a little bit of a kerfuffle. So there seems to instantly be this, oh, you know, we need to act a certain way. You know, this is domestic violence. Charles is violent. He's come up here to cause trouble. There's so many leaps made and so many things skipped over that it's just like a record with scratches. Because the way that the police officer, he then relays this weird conversation he's had with Alex to the new set of officers who are going to go inside the home, because he's just about to be told to turn his recording equipment off. So this is the end of the deal with this police officer for now. He relays the little story about the timeline. He kind of alludes that it was a little bit tricky to get, but he's not discussing how garbled it is, how nothing makes sense. He's not discussing that he's not sure if Alex has called his sister, why he misspelled the name, why someone that he's known for so many years, even if maybe he'd laid a hand on Laurie, which we're told wasn't the case. It was just a little bit of a, you know, there was no expression that, oh, you know, he's backhanded, whacked her, hit her with a fist, shoved her, nothing like that. It was a scuffle, if that, or a verbal altercation. It's not described as Charles being violent in a particular way toward Laurie, right? So there's no discussion then about demeanor and shit like this, and just going, look, you know, this is kind of what I've managed to get. He does sort of say it was tricky to get it, but he doesn't look stunned. Timeline's not clear at all. He can't tell me straight. Got a couple of things that he just keeps repeating. It's not sitting right with me, and you know, yes, I'll let you get on with your job. And there seems to be, I don't know if they're liaison officers or something like that have been there because maybe there's going to be a battered wife, who knows, and they need support. There's a female officer there in the black clothing, and they're going across to talk with Laurie, Vallow and Tylee. They start discussing, trying to work out who lives there and that sort of thing. And I don't believe they say, and so did Alex ring you, anything like that. It's not clear. Nothing is clear then about the bat with Tylee and the baseball bat, about Laurie leaving, about JJ. Nothing is clear. None of these people should be they should just, for a matter of course, be treated a whole lot differently. And because even if you're, if you're a battered woman, if your husband that maybe has been violent and has been terrifying you, if he's died, surely you'd be still having that emotional response of, wouldn't you just, you couldn't contain the damn wall of some sort of feeling and shock that maybe it's over, maybe that you're safe, that you can't believe it. You'd really want to check, is he really dead? What happened? There is nothing normal, and I know everyone acts differently, reacts differently in circumstances, but none of this is right. Alex isn't in handcuffs just as a matter of course. It doesn't mean he's being arrested. He doesn't have to be read his rights, but just par for the course. I mean, you see people get handcuffed all the time when they haven't shot someone. At the police station, Alex is initially asked, does he need medical care? I mean, the police officer looks at his head and he doesn't even offer him a plaster to put on it or another towel or a clean tissue because there's nothing there. And I want to know, because the timeline is so, it's never resolved, never. This timeline, never resolved. Were Alex's hands, fingers, clothing items, were they taken from him, bag checked, etc., gunshot residue, fingerprints taken, gun license checked? So many times that an investigation could have happened, curious nature, due procedure. Now maybe these things happened. I mean, Alex was, his head was kind of looked at, and he was offered medical help, but what else happened? Was he fingerprinted and his record found out right then and there? Because he is from out of town and Charles is out of state, so if nothing's just pinging up on their screens for their state, well, they need to be looking in these other states, don't they? Cross-referencing, just holding until they're sure. The statements are so ridiculous. Even at the time, in an intense situation, sure, your little cop senses are just going tingle, tingle. Wouldn't the hackles be standing up on the back of your neck? Wouldn't the hair be standing up? Wouldn't your gut just, you'd be clenching? Wouldn't your something inside just go high alert? Was Laurie tested for gunshot residue? Were the fingerprints on the bat taken? I mean, we know lots of people might have touched that bat, but were Tylee's, I mean, maybe it's her bat, you'd expect her fingerprints, but was there something odd about the fingerprints on the baseball bat? I'm assuming the gun was fingerprinted. I'm assuming projection work was done of angles of bullets. Alex is quite tall. Laurie's 5'6", not too petite, but she's sort of like a little US size 2, I'd say, and 5'6". and Alex being 6 foot something. So the projection in the chest might be telling. He was lying face down. Was he questioned about this CPR that he was given? Charles was lying face down. Was he questioned about that? I mean, there's just so many questions. I want to know what evidence was taken from this house. I want to know who put together this timeline, who cross-referenced this timeline, who analysed this call. I know that they say afterwards that the investigation was ongoing for a little while, because quite a while later these cops had no idea there was a big life insurance policy. They didn't do any investigation into what had been going on with regards to allegations from Charles. I mean, here is a man that has just been shot, and he's got an estranged wife there that's been threatening his life. Now, it wouldn't do for someone to be harassing their own husband and then to have shot their husband in self-defense. It would be much better if someone else was there to do it, obviously. Less suspicion. We can obviously see that less questions are going to be asked. This troubles so many people, doesn't it? And who knows how these good people, these police officers, who knows how they were feeling at the time, what they were doing, what supervision they were doing, how their reports were being reviewed on the case, what it was like in the debriefings, how they were advised to proceed with their investigations, what I's and T's they were ensured were, being dotted and crossed. And, is this just investigation light? Everyone's on a bit of a diet. Things should have been pieced together much more quickly. It should have been noted, Alex's demeanour, Laurie's demeanour. Yes, people react in very strange ways, and you need to assess those ways and just ensure that they're falling within some sort of parameter. Cops do see a lot of grief, and they see a lot of people in a lot of intense situations, and they would have very good understanding, and they could always sort of show footage to experts, to people that maybe know more, do some collaboration, because here you've got a suburban neighbourhood, a shooting in the morning, a neighbour came across and could have had valuable information, and they're just told, go away. Now, I don't know, were they questioned later? Because that neighbour is valuable in pinning down this timeline. Well, does this tie in with what you saw and heard? Cars coming, going, the gunshot timing with relation to the cars leaving. That neighbour probably had something to say. They probably weren't being nosy. The neighbour to the right of the house, as you look toward the street, came out and put their rubbish behind the gate, and they were probably having a little bit of a look. But maybe they were hoping to be asked questions. I'm sure maybe they were door knocked and everything. But how did this cross-referencing work out to this timeline they're being told? There were so many red flags. There were so many holes that weren't plugged, and this is injustice for Charles Vallow, and we all know the repercussions that this investigation had. And this isn't to say we don't know, and I don't know what reputation these police officers had. Some of them seemed really green with the situation. We don't know what's happened to them afterward. We don't know what type of training they had, what type of backgrounds they had, what kind of record they had. We don't know how many types of these cases that they had investigated or been in charge of or been part of in the past. We don't know, but what is their where is their fallibility? Where is their responsibility? What are their key performance indicators in a job like this, where they have to follow procedure, due process, investigate, analyze, question, and it seems like there was no investigation deep enough, as if it was never going to go to trial. Everything was at, because this might be a domestic situation, domestic violence. Well, what, are they all too scared to do a proper job? They still need to follow through, and it's great. Okay, yeah, we can be assured that that is the case. They didn't want to find out. Sorry, this is 30 minutes. Holy moly. I mean, this just, doesn't it blow your mind? You've got so many questions. There's so many more, but the things that I just wanted to reiterate were, what evidence was collected and why didn't it be immediately acknowledged as incongruent? Alex's cleaning up materials, not spelling the Vallow name correctly, reason for that, screwed up timeline. Was it cross-referenced very, very carefully with everything that the neighbours can say and every bit of data that they can collect, such as what time did Laurie Vallow arrive at school? With JJ, was she seen there? How did she appear? What happened? Did they, was everything normal? Is the time frame all correct with that journey? When did Alex decide that he was going to come up, and why wasn't this discovered sooner? That, I think Summer has made this call and requested that Alex come. Hi, Alex. Hey, how are you? Still got that gun? Yeah, could you come up to Laurie's house, please? Cool. Yeah, bring your togs. So many questions, and no one wants to get down on law enforcement because there's many cases where they are getting ripped to shreds. And as I say, we've always got this 1%, 1%, 1% of circumstances, of attitudes, of, everything, right? And there's you can't dismiss everyone because there's that 99 or the 95% of connected, present, conscientious, curious people in all roles, in all walks of life, people who are doing their best, and people in all sorts of situations working in teams to find truth and to work for justice, to be fair and to protect and serve. And whether there's I'm so sorry, whether there's that I am so sorry, excuse me, whether the thin blue line or the head of the fish, culture, attitudes from everywhere, with religion to culture within organisations varying everywhere, whatever is making a difference to everything, we've got to remember it is 1%.